Hey again, everybody, what's up? Welcome to another edition of Wheel of Albums. Like my brother Adam and our friend Jack, I am Justin. This is the beginning of Season 3. What we do here on Wheel of Albums is we spin a wheel of the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. We listen to an album a few times during the week, and then we get back to you and let you know if you think it's an album you must hear before you die. As you can tell, it is snowing right now, which is a perfect setting for our first album of the season. Porcupine by Echo, and The Bunnymen. Echo, Liverpool's favorite lads.
Time to kick off another season of Wheel of Albums. To kick off the season, we just got a fresh coat of snow, so I went out in my car and I'm staring out at the snow. The cover of Porcupine has inspired me to record and ponder this album while staring at some fresh snow and 20-degree weather. And gotta say, I'm excited to listen to this.
One of the first things I bought from Echo and The Bunnymen was songs to learn and sing, because I'd seen a lot of their videos on MTV 120 Minutes, and I enjoyed them. I think Seven Seas was the first video I remember seeing whenever I was a young lad. Fast forward a few more years, I ended up picking up Ocean Rain and their self-titled album. This album I have listened to before, but I don't remember it leaving a lasting impression, except for the first two songs on here, the wonderful singles, The Cutter and The Back of Love. There's not a stinker on their compilation Songs to Learn and Sing. That's just my own opinion. So I'm really looking forward to listening to Porcupine again, seeing deep down why this album is on 1001 albums you must hear before you die. Jack?
My initial reaction was I thought Lips Like Sugar would be on this, because I really don't know a whole lot of Echo and the Bunnymen songs. Got them confused frequently with a lot of the and bands coming out of Britain in the early 80s. And I did not know that they had such a prolific discography, and I think I had heard The Cutter before.
If you read around, it says that Echo and the Bunnymen saved British rock and roll at this time around in the early 80s. You look at the charts and you see all the new wave and new romantic pop stuff that was going on. Kajagoogoo was number one with Too Shy in England when this album came out. You look at the success Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet and all those bands were having. I could see why people would say this is a savior of British rock and roll. I mean, personally, I'm not 100% on board with that, but what do you guys think? And are there any contemporaries around this time period that you compare with Echo and the Bunnymen?
I gotta say, I didn't realize how much they sounded like U2.
I think a text from Adam actually pronounced them as fake U2 at one point over the week.
A little bit of maybe the psychedelic furs, some Cure in there with the synths and some other things. Like on Gods Will Be Gods, they sound very much... It feels like Robert Smith ripped them off for the acoustic strumming that he uses on In Between Days. I guess lore has it that the Bunnymen kind of saved British rock and roll in the early 80s. I'm not going to give them credit for that, but I think they were maybe part of the post-punk revolution. They're maybe important after listening to this album, but I don't think it's necessarily they saved British rock and roll themselves.
What I think of in my experience of early British rock or rock and roll, early 80s British rock and roll, I liked Bauhaus a lot, and somehow was familiar with them more than Echo and the Bunnymen and Jesus and the Mary Chain. I'm not sure how Bauhaus came to the forefront in my knowledge, maybe through the comic book store, but that's who I associate it with, early British rock and roll.
So evidently there was a lot of internal struggle between the band members themselves and the record label on the recording of Porcupine, and the label actually rejected the original album, which led to L. Shankar, not to be confused with Ravi Shankar from the Beatles' George Harrison days. He was L. Shankar was brought in, and he played, most notably on the album, a 12-string double violin on all 10 tracks of Porcupine.
And The Back of Love, which was the first single from Porcupine, was released many months before this album came out. And Shankar was on there with his strings that really helped propel that. So while they're in a bind, it's like, hey, let's call back the guy that had the strings, the 12-string violin from... The Back of Love, and he helped, propel this thing a little bit more. It's tough to imagine The Cutter without those strings.
It's a good thing that the record label kind of pushed back on them. It made them reevaluate and put Shankar's strings on, which certainly is the most notable thing about the album, especially on the fabulous song The Cutter. I give a few bonus points. The Gods Will Be Gods and The Back of Love, and Bluer Skies is a good closing track.
So it had appeared that they're more string heavy than some of the other British rock acts. I like it. It's a welcome addition, I think. And I think there was some marimba or xylophone in there too. I really like it. I like that they have more experimentation instrument-wise rather than just straight studio-wise, trying to use studio wizardry. But they're playing different instruments. They're having an exploration of sound. I didn't know the fellow's name was Shankar, but adds even more mystique to it, so that's good.
Shankar's strings are definitely the de facto that makes this album a little bit different from the other albums. Even though on Ocean Rain, the orchestration on there is brought up even a little bit more. But yeah, something else we could discuss, I guess, is Echo, the name Echo being a drum machine, and how Pete DeFreitas came in on Crocodiles and lent his drums. And just not that, the guy was really good at lending a whole bunch of different percussion, and that really comes through anytime I listen to Echo and the Bunnymen. It's a really enjoyable thing. How'd you guys feel about Pete DeFreitas? Unfortunately, part of the 27 Club, passing away way too early in a motorcycle accident. How'd you feel about his contributions here on Porcupine?
Echo and the Bunnymen have hired a real live human being to be behind their drum kit or entirely in their percussion department. I am very satisfied. I wasn't familiar with the drum machine songs, but I don't think that they could pull off the marimba or the xylophone or the tubes or the pipes, whatever you want to call them, hanging out on My White Devil. That's that third song. That is a load that he's carrying. He's carrying all of Echo and the Bunnymen, and that one sounds to me on this album the most Bauhaus of it, other than the vocal stylings of, I believe it's McCulloch or McCullough, who has a lighter voice, obviously, than Peter Murphy. But that has kind of that drone that still has the lightheartedness that a xylophone brings. Cheers to Pete DeFreitas.
As far as the drumming, sorry, Pete, but they could have easily used a drum machine. The drums didn't stand out to me at all in this album.
I know you're a big fan of photography, Adam. How do you feel about the pictures and everything as far as this album goes? Are we heading to Iceland in the new year?
Probably be a good album to take in Iceland for the first time. So love the album cover of Porcupine. The frozen Gullfoss waterfall is pretty epic. It gives me some YouTube New Year's Day vibes. And then once you get there and you get to the famed hot springs of Iceland, you're throwing on some sugar rose and you're relaxing in the hot springs.
Did have some Icelanders earlier, Sigur Rós.
That would be episode 27, link provided for Get His Video.
Right out of the gate, I'll just say Echo and the Bunnymen are way better than Sigur Rós.
Higher Hell is good, but even better, like Adam mentioned before, Gods Will Be Gods, I think is the perfect Icelandic or just any type of cold weather song. There's something powerful about that song. It feels like you're off on a conquest to conquer something. And just the way it cuts off at the end. You got what you were looking for. Just out of nowhere is the biggest surprise on the album for me. Gods Will Be Gods is my favorite find on this album.
This does not put me in the mindset of Iceland, but I could see it either having to hole up and just try to make yourself feel better by listening to some things. Maybe you're overcoming a cold and then your medicine gives you a little bit of that adrenaline. So thank you, Echo and the Bunnymen. This is helping me recoup from a nasty bout of a sinus infection, letting it kind of enter into your cavity of your nasal cavities and work its magic. Rattle it loose a little bit, get the phlegm out.
All right, well, we look at the final ratings for Porcupine by Echo and the Bunnymen. I scored it highest with a 6.7, Adam a 6.2, Jack a 5.7. That's giving all the songs on the album a 1 to 10 rating and then dividing it by the number of songs on the album. Final rating of 6.276. My 3 favorite songs, The Cutter, The Back of Love, and Gods Will Be Gods. My least favorite song on Porcupine was the self-titled track, Porcupine, gathered 15 points.
So you can still get the phlegm out with it.
All right, must you listen to Porcupine by Echo and the Bunnymen before you die? It's always tough for me because I still stand by my feelings that these guys never really released a bad song or a bad album in the 80s. I hear bits and pieces on other albums before and after. I hear a bit of a promise and ripeness. I hear Lips Like Sugar, a drum beat somewhere, or a guitar from Will Sargent that reminds me of something from their self-titled album. And I hear a lot of the pieces that will come together for Ocean Rain on the album. At least to me, Porcupine is like the odd man out. I think it's a really good album to listen to, but we only have so much room. When it comes to 1,001 albums you must hear before you die, I read somewhere where Ian McCullough said he had a tough time with this album. It reminds him of the anti-him, and you can hear that little mark right there is what sinks this down to the you don't need to hear this before you die mark. Jack?
I will tell you that this is a surprisingly difficult decision for me. I was so unexpectedly pleased with these songs, which are basically pop songs underneath it all. It's very impressive what they were doing instrumentally wise, studio-wise, and in that scene of this British rock where they didn't know if they were post-punk or poppy or goth or whatever new genre some record critics were going to invent to try to pigeonhole acts into. Ultimately, I think because I had such a good time listening to this album, I will say, to my own surprise, yes, this Echo and the Bunnymen Porcupine is an album you should hear before you die. I would have bet money against me picking yes on this, but here we are.
I'm going to put Porcupine in the realm of like Pornography by The Cure, where it's probably not their best album. I don't even know if Echo and the Bunnymen would say that it's the album you need to hear by them. I guess I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, you don't have to hear this one. You need to hear The Cutter. You dive in for that one. If you really like Echo and the Bunnymen, you dive in, but I think better Echo and the Bunnymen albums to hear. So my answer is no, and I'm going to give them a tip of the cap to this one because I don't think we get Ocean Rain without pushing boundaries here. Tip of the cap for that, but overall, no, you don't need to hear Porcupine before you die.
All right, I did not have Jack as a yay and me and Adam as a nay going into this one. Follow along on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube for new episodes each Monday. Adam, spin that wheel.
The wheel's been spun, and up for our next episode. Justin, Jack, pack your bags. We're heading back to 1989, and we're traveling straight to London to get in the club and listen to some Soul to Soul with their 1989 release, Club Classics, Volume 1. Get your groove on, put that beat down, let's go.
For Adam and Jack, I'm Justin. We'll see you next time on Wheel of Albums, Soul to Soul.
Jesus and the Mary Chain, Susie and the Banshees, Adam and the Ants.
Right after I'm done recording, go out and hike in the snow with my daughters, and I'm going to take some snappies and send those your way, Justin, so you can maybe add those to the podcast episode for this one. And I'm going to be honest. Are you going to listen to this for your next Icelandic adventure? I'm going to say yeah.
The Nook of Indiana is coming with you too. Let's go, fam. Reykjavik bust.